All right, so let's talk about Tottenham. I had them in at 10th, and I mentioned I think they're on a bit of an upward trajectory. You don't have them in your rankings at all. So let's get down to the bottom of this. What's the reason that you're not nearly as high on Tottenham as I might be?
I think, Mourinho's a divisive figure, but I just think Tottenham are on their way down. I think a few years ago, Pochettino took that group of players as far as they could be taken. Harry Kane, Dele Alli, Christian Eriksen, as it was then, as their standout players. I just think he eked every last drop out of them. And, Mourinho, you can't discredit Mourinho and what he's done in his career, but I I don't see him making this Tottenham team into one of the 10 best teams in Europe. I just don't see it. And I think they're tired. Yeah, I'll let you defend yourself, but in a word, I think Tottenham are a tired club.
Well, I'll I will preface this by saying that this is where they are in my rankings right now on current form. And I think if you look back at their last few games, they've now scored 11 goals in their last two games. Well, 13 actually, because there was the Newcastle game in between Southampton and United. But I think that I get what you're saying with Poch kind of taking this team to its ceiling and then having nowhere else to go. But at the same time, I think Mourinho kind of took them to a different building with a different ceiling in a way. He's not necessarily pushing them through that ceiling, but it's a completely different style of football that, you use Harry Kane as an example. In Poch's system, he was leading the line, pressing, and was very much the focal point of the attack. If you watch Tottenham's last couple of games, Harry Kane has been assisting Son left and right, and he's been dropping back kind of in that gap between the opponent's defense and midfield, and he's almost like a point guard in a sense, or a quarterback, where he's kind of
Yeah.
facilitating the ball around the field. And that's something we kind of knew Harry Kane could do, but we haven't really seen it all that much because he's been obviously such a prolific goal scorer. But I think you just see Jose Mourinho getting different things out of players than Poch did, not necessarily saying that Poch wasn't getting the best out of anybody or that Mourinho is essentially getting the best out of somebody, but he's bringing different attributes out of players. And you look at the signings that they've made, I think Reguilon is a brilliant signing at left back. I don't think
Hmm.
Ben Davies was really up to it as far as competing where Tottenham wants to be competing, which is in that top four and making deep runs into the Champions League and finally getting their hands on some silverware. I think Reguilon was a brilliant signing. And I know, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg isn't necessarily a sexy signing, but he's a Mourinho signing, a guy that kind of like Nemanja Matic, who Mourinho had at Chelsea and then very specifically brought to United. He did a role that Jose very, he needs in that Jose team. And Jose teams are so unique in the way that they defend and they press. So I don't know. I think Jose's just got different things out of different players that Poch didn't. Not saying that one is better than the other, but we're seeing new attributes from different players, and I think there's still progress to be made here, especially with Gareth Bale coming in. That's a whole other factor that we haven't even discussed yet. Is that Gareth Bale is back?
Yeah,
So
yeah. Now, but before I get on to Bale, yeah, just to respond to what you've just said, um, yeah, I think Mourinho's kind of proven himself over in recent times, anyway, to be a bit of an impulsive coach. So him moving Kane back to like a quarterback type position, as you described it, was more of a reactionary movement, I think, because he was becoming less effective. He's a slow striker, and he just wasn't. We've seen him play much better before. And Mourinho came to the very, I'll give him his credit. He came to a very smart decision to tell Kane to drop off and to tell the likes of Son or Lucas Moura or Lamella, whoever's playing on the wings, to kind of try and get beyond their last man, because we know that Kane has got the ability to drop off and play that role. we're used to seeing it in England because Wayne Rooney did a very similar thing towards the end of his career, even though Kane's not in his later years just yet. Um, but yeah, he's a reactionary coach. Like we saw with Dele Alli. Obviously, he's sort of gone off a cliff again now. But last season, he came in, said some harsh words to Dele Alli, and he was in the best form we've seen him for about 3 or 4 years after that. So his reactionary methods are in a good spell at the moment, but I think he's struggling to nail down a solid identity with Spurs. I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, no, I totally agree that he's very reactionary, especially these days where he seems to kind of um, unfortunately bring a lot of toxicity to clubs. We see the last couple clubs he's been at where he's left the club in kind of tatters in a way. He's just been like
Mm.
so toxic and calling players out by name in the media and all that kind of stuff. But for me, Jose is a very short term manager and he can win now in a way. We like I said, we haven't seen it lately. That we're still kind of talking about the old Jose, but I'm starting to see from this Tottenham team some of the trademark patterns that we saw at Jose's Inter or Jose's good Chelsea sides. So I think I'm really just kind of going on a hope here that this continues. And if this continues and you add in Gareth Bale, then you look at a front three of Son, Kane, and Bale, and you're talking top five front three in Europe potentially. I mean, that's an unreal front three as far as talent goes.
Yeah, potentially. Gareth Bale's a really interesting talking point because um, no one really knows what's going to happen when he gets in the team. We've got two Gareth Bales. We've got the Gareth Bale who absolutely dominated the Premier League before he left for Real Madrid and commanded a world record transfer fee at the time of £86 million. And he kind of hit the ground running when he got to Madrid as well. Or we've got the Gareth Bale who doesn't love football anymore, who is more interested, seemingly, in picking up his wage packet and swanning off to play golf on the weekends rather than putting in the work and grinding out wins with the team. So it's pretty difficult to know which Gareth Bale you're going to get. I've heard some interesting views from both sides. Like some people have said convincingly that maybe Gareth Bale just needs an arm around him. Maybe he just needs to feel like he's the man at the club because it's a well-known fact. Zinedine Zidane wasn't that kind of figure for him. He wasn't putting his arm around him saying, "You're the main man. This team needs you." That wasn't what was happening at all. But one thing that we will say about Jose related to Gareth Bale is Jose's a great man manager, especially to his key players. John Terry, Frank Lampard have talked about it in the past. So I'm sure Jose will, be well equipped to push the right buttons for Bale to perhaps get him into that kind of form again. And I'm not a big, I don't really like Spurs, but as a neutral, I would love to see, Gareth Bale near to his top form back in the Premier League. I think that would be great for everyone to see.
Yeah, well, I think I'm a bit torn on Gareth Bale, and one part of me says that he acted the way he acted in Madrid because of the environment that he was in. This is a player that scored one of the greatest El Clasico goals we've ever seen in that Copa del Rey game where he knocked the ball around the defender and kind of veered out of bounds and came back in
Yeah.
and scored. This is a guy that scored an overhead kick in a Champions League final, one of the greatest, if not the greatest Champions League final goal we've ever seen. And he's largely been a key part of a team that won 3 Champions Leagues in a row. And you know how these Madrid fans are and clubs like Barcelona. They're whistling players that have given them everything and given them Champions Leagues and blah, blah, blah. And, Gareth Bale has spoken about it before publicly about he didn't understand why he's getting whistled because of a few bad performances with everything he's given to the club. So part of me thinks that he will come into an environment where he is loved and he will forever be loved by the Tottenham faithful because of what he was at the club, even before this new era of Bale at Tottenham. The
Mm.
first Bale era at Tottenham. He did so much for that club that he will forever be loved, even if what he didn't result in silverware. He's just still such a hero at that club because of what he was and what he provided in those years that he was there. And so a big part of me thinks, like you said, he comes back into an environment where he is the man and everybody loves him no matter what his past or present is. And I think that's a good environment for him to love football again. And a Gareth Bale that loves playing football. Now his fitness is a whole other question, but a Gareth Bale that loves playing football is obviously a world class talent. So it's just going to be about whether or not that environment is the right fit again for him, or if that Gareth Bale is just gone and now he's just a golfer.
Yeah, no, I think, well, either way you spin it, I think um, Gareth Bale is going to be quite important for Spurs' prospects for the season. I don't have him. I don't have Spurs in my top 10 or even near my top 10 at the moment because Gareth Bale's not come back in, and I don't. I thought they were a pretty stale club last season, and I haven't seen anything significant. Um, if we ignore the 6-1 win at Old Trafford the weekend just gone, I haven't seen anything too significant over the long term to suggest that club's really made a big step up. But, as we've been saying, if you throw a Gareth Bale in there that's scoring world-class goals, scoring 20 goals, setting up teammates every week, that's the kind of injection that a team like that needs. So, if Bale does turn out to be a success when he comes back to Tottenham, I won't laugh at you putting them in the top 10 in weeks down the line.
Yeah, I mean, only time will tell. They've got a London derby against West Ham this upcoming weekend, but until then, they don't really play anybody until November 21st. They are going to play Manchester City, so I think at least for a little bit, we're not going to get to see a real test as far as what this team really is. But like I said, time will tell.